Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Hello, and welcome back to Must Love Books podcast. Today, I am here with a fellow podcast host, Janessa from Read the Book First podcast. Janessa, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. I
Thanks for
love
having
doing crossovers. This
us.
is like my fourth one now. I just love having you all over here. More the merrier. I'm all for it. So why don't you go ahead and tell my listeners about Read the Book First?
Yeah. So Read the Book First is a book to movie focused podcast that I host. It started as me forcing my friends to come read books with me and making a podcast they would actually, follow through and actually finish the books that I wanted them to read with me. We'll read a book and just discuss it like a book club. And then the following week we watch the adaptation, whether that's a movie, a TV show. Sometimes we include Broadway plays, depending on the content, and just review them, but also compare them. And we talk a lot about what a quote good adaptation is. It's a very subjective question, which I love because, there are some adaptations that the bookish world all agrees are good, but in general, it's such a question that changes person to person. So that's what we focus on and read new stuff, classics, random stuff. It's a good time.
And you've been doing your podcast for 3 seasons now?
Yes, yeah, we're almost done with season three. We started in summer 2023. There's some really fun books and movies we're covering, so yeah, it's been fun, a fun project.
Yeah, it sounds a lot of fun. I love adaptations myself, and it's kind of funny the way I used to view them versus how I view them now. I used to be so critical, and like I was the person who was constantly like, that wasn't in the book. That wasn't like that. They didn't do that right. And now I just kind of, I still do a little bit of like, wow, they're doing it this way instead kind of mindset, but mostly I focus on separating them as two different mediums. And you know what? It makes me a lot happier.
hmm Yeah, that's definitely, felt the same way, especially when I was younger. You know, for example, when the Divergent movies came out, I was just like every little thing. I have a bachelor's degree in English literature, so after that, I was like, everyone's take is different and unique, but like, you can still be critical while also giving space for the adaptation to be different on purpose, you know? Like, there's like a nuanced middle thing there, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that I appreciate adaptations more when I'm less critical and just kind of allow things to exist in its own medium. That doesn't mean that I don't compare and I don't critique. I still do. I just have a less critical mindset about it.
hmm Yeah, a lot of my friends that I continually convinced to join my podcast, some of them are like, it has to be exactly like the original where other ones were like, it can be set in space now. I will still like it. So it's interesting to see everyone's different views on what an adaptation should be and what makes it good or bad. It's been really fun to bring in my bookish friends. Again, more friends, the merrier.
Yes, the Book Podcast Connection, which is our networking group on Instagram. You can find it at Book Podcast Connections. We currently have over 75 book related podcasts in our group, which is just so amazing to me. When I first created this group, not even a year ago, I expected and hoped for like maybe 15 different podcasts to just come together and connect and, talk about the hosting side of things, create episodes together, just different things like that. And now it has grown so much. And I am just so grateful for each and every one of our members and how much they contribute and how much everyone is just able to gain and take away from this group. For our listeners, real quick, you can again find it on Instagram, Book Podcast Connections. I am working on the website hopefully it'll be fully out soon. I'm just working on the directory. That's a work in progress, but it's coming. Stay tuned. And you can just go to this page to help find so many incredible bookish podcasts to find, we have Sarah J. Maas podcasts, we have horror podcasts, we have a plethora of spicy and smut related podcasts. We have some writing podcasts who are starting to find their way into the group as well. So that's a great resource to help our listeners connect with other podcasts and find more of what they like to listen to.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed joining for just the sense of community it brings because as someone who is a one woman show of a hobby podcast, this is not my day job. It is just something that I have decided to do and put a lot of energy towards. The first like year or so doing the podcast, I was just like, it's just me and the friends I bring along, but they just talk and then they leave where I have to do the editing, the upload, like figure out all the behind the scenes stuff. I think I joined the connections group at the end of last summer, early fall. But since, last September, I've been able to like talk to a lot of folks and like troubleshoot issues, listen to like not just like listening to each other's podcasts for support, but also like, how did you guys fix this? Or do you think this graphic is cool? And like just those simple little bits of community have been really helpful and have like helped me avoid I guess creative burnout in some way. So I've really enjoyed the group.
I am honestly just so blessed to been able to build such a community. We have Bookstagram communities, we have book talk communities, and now we finally have a place for book podcasters to come together and connect and network, and we support each other and lift each other up, and we listen to each other's podcasts, and we host each other on our own shows and do crossovers. And now we are stepping a little bit into some event planning. September 30th is International Podcast Day, and the Book Podcast Connection will be doing just a full day of Instagram lives and crossover episodes with all of our fellow podcasts. And so I'm just so grateful for this community and how much everyone has just supported each other and really lifted each other up in the group.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see. There's a book podcast niche for anyone out there. Like, if you like a specific book or a specific author, there's probably a podcast doing episodes only on that book or author, which is really fun to see. Like, I say my podcast, we do book to movie adaptations primarily, and there's been some other like book to movie or TV show adaptations, and we have our own little like side group chat where we talk about, casting results and we just like nerd out about like film and movie stuff, which has been really fun. So if you listeners or creators out there, go check out and find a podcast. You'll like one of us at least, if not five.
Yeah, if not five. And, it's also such a great resource for those who are entering or even just playing with the idea of creating a book podcast themselves. And this is something that I have talked about on this podcast recently, but I've been really just appreciating and kind of following this trend of, from Bookstagram to Book Talk to the rise of the book podcast and just seeing all these new podcasts coming up. I mean, in this networking group, I would have to say at least a third is new podcasts who are entering the sphere, which has been absolutely wonderful. And I just love to see it. Everyone expressing their opinions and sharing book recs and just really connecting with other listeners. It's just been something that I have really, really appreciated seeing.
Yeah. And like it's interesting 2 years ago when I was still in college and had energy, I had a very small booktube account and I have, friends from back then 10 years ago that I'm still like online bookish friends with, which has been great. And then, also into Bookstagram. And then I was a teacher for a while. And so I stopped all of that because I didn't have time or energy to do that one I was teaching. And then I've recently stopped teaching and doing other work now. And so I've a year or two ago got back on Book Talk and saw that community. Now we're back on Bookstagram. And so it's interesting to see how the pockets of the internet like very not mimic, but like you can see similarities that were part of the bookish world 10 years ago on YouTube and are mimicking on TikTok and also Instagram, but also like the podcasting version of it is different, right? Because it's primarily an auditory medium. So in some ways less connective in the visually. You know, some people obviously do the video podcasts and stuff, but also it's very intimate because it's less edited, I feel like in general, and it's more intimate sometimes, which so it's just interesting how the new mediums carry similar things from old book communities, but also add new aspects.
I definitely
Yeah.
agree. It does feel a little more intimate as a host of a book podcast. I feel a lot more vulnerable when I post here. Instagram is mostly just photos from my posting. So that there's not a lot of vulnerability in there. I make my images on Canva and I post them and there we go. And TikTok, I don't really like doing videos of myself. I guess that is a form of vulnerability there, but I don't really make that content as much anymore, so I'm not really expressing that side. But with the book podcast, because I keep it mostly audio, I am able to comfortably express more and put myself out there more. So yeah, I absolutely agree that podcasting is a bit more intimate than Bookstagram or even YouTube is.
Feel like most podcasts in general are also slower in the way that there's more time and more space for like explaining thoughts and going down tangents. Whereas, you know, even longer videos on YouTube or video podcasts on YouTube, they're still, you know, you can see the jump cuts throughout, you know? It's cool to see the evolution of podcasts.
So, because you are Read the Book First podcast, I thought that it would be fun for us to just kind of go in and, just talk about some of our favorite and maybe even some of our least favorite book adaptations. So, what are some book adaptations that you have absolutely loved that really just hit the mark for you?
So I went through the list I have, the growing list of adaptations, and the ones that I love and have, they're like classic ones. Like The Princess Bride is an excellent adaptation. I have two episodes on this, both on the book and the movie. But, you know, the author of the book wrote the screenplay. So that's a unique situation where often the authors don't have that direct link to the movie. But it's so good for so many different reasons. Um, I really like Treasure Planet, is a great adaptation. The first episode we ever did was on Treasure Island, and I did not like the book. I hated the book, but Treasure Planet is one of my favorite Disney movies of all time and has all the best bits of Treasure Island, in my opinion.
Treasure
And then
Planet classic.
it's so good. I love it so much. Sometimes when that song that during the montage of Jim learning
Everything.
space pirate stuff. Yes, yes. That song will shuffle onto my Spotify. And I'm just like, I wasn't expecting to cry today, but I guess here I am crying.
What I really love about Treasure Planet is it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how long it's been. This movie always stands up.
It's so good. The reason why it didn't do great in the box office is because it came out the same week as Harry Potter.
Did it
So,
really?
you know,
That
uh-huh. It
sounds,
came out
that
the
feels so weird to me. It feels older than that. But I also know
right?
that it was a big time when Disney was really changing their art styles. They were,
Mm-hmm.
shifting away from using hand-drawn animation. And I know that they didn't really promote it anywhere near as hard as they did with other movies coming out that time. And, even their animated films that came out shortly afterwards. Treasure Planet just kind of was forgotten,
Mm-hmm.
which is just so wild to me because it is honestly, in my opinion, one of the best animated films Disney has ever created.
I wholeheartedly agree. I love it so much. So it's a great adaptation in my opinion. Another top favorite, which is a very popular top favorite, but 10 Things I Hate About You is just a fantastic Shakespeare retelling. I was an English major. I love Shakespeare. Love it. Hate Taming of the Shrew because it's a problematic play. But anyways, but that movie is just perfect. No notes. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, that one
But
always has always been a favorite of mine.
do you have a favorite adaptation
Let's
off the top of your
see.
head?
Oh my goodness. There are so many that I actually really do have an appreciation for. I mean, one is the obvious one that I've mentioned on this podcast a bajillion times, but I really do love Hunger Games. Although I
It's
would
so
like to
solid.
see it is solid and it stands up. And it's something that is still relevant, which is kind of sad when you think about that it's still relevant today, which is why, we have Suzanne Collins writing more. But I would really like someday to see a slightly more accurate adaptation where the actors are younger in comparison to their characters' ages because having them be in their 20s and they look like they're in their 20s, it really changes it when you realize that they're all actually supposed to look like how Rue looks. And like it really adds a whole level of disturbing to the games. But an adaptation that is more authentic would probably have to be rated R because of
Yeah, and it would
all the
limit the
horrible
audience.
all the
Hmm.
horrible gory things that happen and PETA losing his leg. I would like to have seen that disability representation a little more, but even without those things I do have a strong appreciation for the Hunger Games films. Let's see, what's another adaptation? I'm like looking at my bookshelves. I'm currently watching, and I only read the first book in this series and it was a long time ago, so I've got them on my Libby holds list to reread these books, but I'm currently watching the new adaptation for Fallen. Have you seen that one
I
at
don't
all?
know that book.
Okay, so the book
Yeah.
originally came out, it was from like the younger days when YA romance was all about either vampires or angels, and there was always a love triangle involved, because that was just the time. That's all
That
we
was the bread
had.
and butter then.
The series is Fallen by Lauren Kate, and it originally released in 2009. There was a movie around that time that was actually fairly accurate to the book, in regards to adaptations. It was a fair adaptation. Now on AMC, they have a new adaptation that is a lot grittier and a little bit more thriller, and it's not book accurate like whatsoever at all. I'm only a few episodes in at the point of recording, and it got to the point where I have to just kind of forget the book because the only thing that's the same is like some of the characters' names. And like that's it so far. Everything else is really different. Standing on its own and separating it from the novel, it's good. It's very entertaining. It's still a romance at heart, but it's more of a thriller. Everything is a lot more mysterious and you're not really sure where things are going, and you can't even really tell like who the bad guys are and who the good guys are in this adaptation because you don't know if they're going to keep it the same as the
Hmm.
series. So I am
Yeah.
appreciating that one right now.
Sometimes you just have to let go of the book accuracy part. And like sometimes in my head, I'll be like, imagine this is fan fiction. And suddenly I'm like, yeah, this is fine.
That
No issues
is
at all.
that is exactly how I've started looking at it is don't look at it as an adaptation because then you're just going to compare it and you're going to
Hmm.
critique it and you're not going to appreciate it and enjoy it as much. If you view it as fan fiction, which I mean technically it kind of is. In a
Hmm.
way, many adaptations are just fan fiction. And I think going into it with that mindset just really allows you to appreciate the artistry and the storytelling just so much more. And that is how I'm viewing adaptations from here on out, especially as someone who loves fan fiction and who really started as a fan fiction writer myself,
Hmm.
that's the way you got to look at it.
Yeah, and it makes sense. There is a correlation between adapting a play to a movie to a TV show and fan fiction. It's just with a lot more funding and backing and resources to it. Last fall, I read for the podcast, I read the first book of what became True Blood, and so I never watched True Blood, and I never read these books, and that book. It's a fun episode because I and my friend who read it, we did not like the book at all. But then I got really into True Blood, and I'm like, okay, so here's an example of like they changed a lot of stuff, but they changed it for the better, at least in my opinion. And what a fun time that is.
Some of my favorite parts of True Blood did not exist in the books whatsoever. And I haven't finished reading the book series. Eventually I do plan to go back and finish one day. But I've read the first four of them, which I think correlates to the first four seasons of the show, and then the show completely changes. Like seasons 5 through 7 have nothing to do with the books whatsoever. But some of my favorite characters, like Jessica, Jessica's my favorite character on that show, and she does not exist in the books at all. And then let's see, Lafayette. I mean, he was a off-page death in the first book, and he is one of the absolute best parts of that whole series, of the TV series. He was incredible. That actor was amazing. He did so well. And so that's another thing that, wasn't part of the books. And the third thing I would
Absolutely.
say is Tara. Tara was in the books, but she was such a completely different character that I hated Tara in the books.
Mm-hmm.
She was just awful, and she and Sookie just were not friends, and I don't even know why they even spoke to each other in the first place, because Tara was awful. But Tara in the
Mm-hmm.
show was an absolute queen. She was incredible and a total badass.
I absolutely agree.
Seasons 1 through 4, in my opinion, are the best part of that show. Season 5 is where it completely changes, and I feel like it changes the characters too much, and the stories have absolutely nothing to the book. So I think this might be a good example of the seasons that stuck to the main overarching plot of the books did better, and in my opinion were the superior seasons. When they started making up their own stuff, I mean, it's still good. It's still an enjoyable show. It's still entertaining, and I still watched it to the very end, and I still loved it. It just changes to the point where it is really a completely separate thing at that point.
Yeah, and like when you're adapting to a TV show, especially the timeline of writing those episodes is so short compared to the time you have to write a novel. And so, for most TV shows that are like pretty like in depth and like have a lot of like lore or, details, oftentimes that's why people get upset with TV show adaptations, right? But then you have to think about kind of how like the sausage is made, right? Like, it's just interesting that process of physically writing the adaptation is so interesting to me that I love. Like I've not watched all of the Outlander seasons. I've watched the first three at least because I've read the first three books and I haven't read past that. But I feel there's just kind of a similar thing there, right? Because those books are huge. Like they're written by a historian. She writes in such detail about the flowers that, they're picking and the food they're cooking that it's when they make it on a TV show and the person's like, yeah, make that flower blue. Everyone's like, the flower should have been white. It's hard, right? The nitpicking. But it's also hard not to do.
Yeah, for sure. Outlander is another adaptation that I was going to put on my list as well. Now I've only read the first book of the series so far. I decided I wanted to wait until the TV series ended, which the final season is next year, I think. I don't know if there's a date on that yet, but there is a final season, and it does have a date, and it is coming. So I decided I was going to just wait until the TV series ended and then go back into reading the books, because I don't like doing both at the same time. One has to come first and then the other one. And that's just how I personally read. So but so far, I've loved the show. I loved the book from what I've read so far. And I know that the first season is what is closest to the books. And I know that unfortunately the show is going to end before the books, because the final two are not released yet. And I think they're ending it on, I think the TV show is ending with book 8, I want to say, as they said. So pretty much one season per book. But I know that they've also kind of mixed some of the timeline around a little bit, which for a TV series with limited episodes and books that are like massive, these books are huge. I can understand why they have to cut so much and why they even change some of the timelines around, because it can't be easy adapting something that big into such a limited medium. The audiobooks for these books are like 20 to 40 hours long, and a season gets like 10 hours. So you can only use like 25% of the books when you really think about it. So I can understand, why so much has gotten cut, and I do have an appreciation for what they have kept and how they are choosing to tell the story in their own way. But I think it is a great adaptation. I definitely do recommend it as a very well done adaptation, and that one definitely goes on the list.
I really enjoyed the first three books, and then I really enjoyed the seasons that matched with it. Those books are so huge, and I am a I prefer small books. But if it's more than 400 pages, my brain's like, you're never gonna finish this. I would finish it. I read a lot of books. I read more than 400 pages a week. It's fine. But my brain suddenly sees the big book and it's like, oh no, homework.
You almost gotta just really
So,
split it
yeah,
up.
yeah. What adaptations have you seen that you're like, this was awful, your least favorite?
Okay, now I really gotta think because I know that there are some that I have seen that I was like, this was horrible and I hate you. But then when you ask me, it's like, wow, I've never seen a movie or read a book in my entire life. What do you mean? I'm gonna
That's how
think
I
of
feel when my
some.
friends ask me what books they should read. I'm like, I don't know what books are. And they're like, you read so many books. I'm like, yes, but I cannot name a single one.
That is really
Um,
funny. Yeah, yeah. Like you
one,
ask me to name a book, and it's like, I've never
yeah.
even seen a book before. What are you talking about?
What is this thing
Never.
called book?
Book? What? What is book?
Um,
So, what are some of your least favorite?
one of my least favorites is Aragon, and I feel like that's a pretty
Oh
like most
God,
people agree.
yes. I forgot
Hmm.
about that one. I hated that movie so
Yeah.
much that I couldn't finish reading the book series. That's how much I hated Aragon.
Hmm. Me too. Yep.
And I
Yeah.
can't even
It's
put
just
my finger on like why. Because there was a lot of it that
it,
like
it
was fairly accurate. There are a lot of specific scenes from the book that made it into the movie, and it feels like it should have been a good adaptation. So why was it so bad?
I rewatched it last summer for the podcast, and I think the issues I had was that the writing had no like substance to it for the script. So like the actors were doing a fine job, like, they weren't bad by any means. It's just that none of the words or the actions like matched up. Like I didn't feel like the chosen one of it all. I was like, I don't care about this kid Aragon in the movie or in the book. Obviously, I'm like, yes, I want to follow this adventure. But in the movie, I was like, okay, I guess you're flying a dragon now. And like the lore, like, again, you can't like, it's hard to, that book is, almost 500 pages. It's hard to put that into an hour and a half movie or whatever it is. But it's just, it felt empty almost. Like they're just missing the like not that it's a really in-depth philosophical book, but there is like there's stuff to it, and it was just it felt empty to me when I rewatched it.
Yeah, it does feel empty. I don't know if it is like a lack of chemistry or if the script was just too basic. Like, because the scenes are there, like,
Hmm.
especially the first half of the movie, the plot is on point. And then it's like the second half of the movie, it kind of like, that's when things really changed. But even from the beginning, the script was not there. The chemistry between the characters didn't feel palpable, and it just did not hit the mark whatsoever.
Hmm. Yeah, that one's still just so disappointing.
Let's see. Another one that I don't think really hit the mark. Well, there was the Mortal Instruments. I thought the cast was good, but I don't think they really had a plan for it. It didn't feel like they had a plan. It kind of felt like from the very beginning of the movie that they expected it to only be one movie. Like they didn't even expect it to get a sequel.
Yeah, I've not read or watched those, but all of my friends who loved those, when they were coming out, none of them have good things to say about either adaptations, which is why I never read or watched them because I was like, well, I trust you guys' opinion. I'm gonna stay away for now, at least until I probably eventually do it on the podcast. But yeah, I've not heard great things about those ones.
Yeah, and I honestly only read the first book. So I guess it's not even really one that I was super into from the beginning. So I don't think it was really for me from the beginning. But even from people who were huge fans of the series, it didn't quite hit for them either. So I think if you're not entertaining the people who didn't read the book and you're not entertaining the people who love the book, then you have no audience.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Now, of course, when we're
Um,
talking about bad adaptations, you have to talk about Allegiant from the Divergent series. Allegiant was so bad that it killed the YA dystopian genre. Like the whole genre.
such a flop.
Yeah. One movie killed the entire genre because, like, you think about it, outside of series that had already been in the works, there were no more huge YA dystopia adaptations after that. They were all done. They're like, no, this bombed so bad that the entire genre is dead to us. And then the
Isn't that the
actors,
one
like,
that they were like two parts
yeah, they split it into
and
two
then they only made
parts.
part one?
And, like, I'm pretty sure Shailene Woodley even quit acting for a while.
Such a mess.
Uh,
And I I loved those books when they came out. I do think, originally Divergent and Insurgent were supposed to be one book when she wrote it, and then the publishers are like, split that in two, and then we're gonna give you a deal for a third. So like in general, my thoughts on the book series is that I do like the first two, but the third one, Legion, I didn't really love. So going into the movies, I was like, okay, this is my least favorite source material of the trilogy. And then the movie was even worse than I expected.
yeah, the third book of the series really did not perform well because you can tell that the author was sick of her main character. Like you could tell that she did not like Triss anymore, that she was done with Triss. And like so it was already doomed from the start.
Yeah, that one was tragic. We did get Uglies this last fall on Netflix.
Yes. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah,
I loved it. I know a lot
yeah.
of people did not like it, and I can understand why they did not like it, but I fucking love that movie. I've watched it like 4 or 5 times. It was fun. It was kind of lighthearted for, a YA dystopia. And it just felt nostalgic to me because it brought me back to like, this is how YA dystopia movies were made.
hmm
So to me, I appreciated the nostalgic feeling that it gave me, and I would love to see them do the next books. I don't think they will. It took 4 years for this movie to even come out in the first place, so I highly doubt they will make more.
I I enjoyed watching it. Like I had a fun time, but I just all the CGI-ness just really like it was too like rich in CGI, like overindulgent almost, which I didn't love. But like as an adaptation, I had a fun time. I watched it a couple times. So like I wouldn't say I think it's a great adaptation. Did I enjoy the movie? Yeah. There's like some movies, like for example, the first Percy Jackson movie, it is an awful adaptation. But did I
But
love
it's
it
a
when it
good
came out when I
movie.
was
Yeah.
15?
Mm-hmm.
15? Love Logan Lerman. So,
Yeah.
like, any
Not a
movie he's in,
great
I'm like,
adaptation at
done.
all. Like it was not
Oh,
accurate.
it's
They
so
changed
bad.
so much. However, if you watch it on its own and like just put the series in a little box in your brain and don't even think about it, then it's a good YA action flick. And it was a lot of
Yeah.
fun, and I had a lot of
Eh,
appreciation for it. And yeah, Logan Lerman was perfect, and they really should have brought him back to play Poseidon in the new Disney adaptation. I would have loved that so
the
much.
dream.
Yes, but alas, they did
Yeah,
not
and
do that.
nothing will feel the way I feel when I watch the Lotus scene for the first
Hmm.
time. The way I felt when I was like 13 or 14 watching that scene. I was like, this is what casinos are going to be like. And then I went to a real casino when I could, and I was like, oh, this is not the vibe.
Like, wow, real life is such a disappointment.
But yeah, like I love that movie. And then the sequel to Sea of Monsters, that's a bad movie. I love it. Like it's
Yeah.
nostalgic. I'm having a good time. Sometimes I just want to enjoy some trash.
Yeah,
Like
like I
I
watched
like
them a few
that.
times and the second one didn't hit as hard as the first. It wasn't a horrible sequel if you've never read the books. It wasn't terrible, but it still just did not hold up to the first one, and the fact that it wasn't as good as the first one and it was inaccurate, like it had two knocks against it already.
hmm I agree.
So I have one that I love the book. It was honestly one of my favorite books growing up. And I love the movie. The book and movie are not related at all outside of like character names, and they just really have nothing to do with each other. And someday I would like to see a more authentic adaptation, but that is Ella Enchanted. I love that goofy, campy musical. It is so cute. It is so much fun. Anne Hathaway is incredible. The whole cast was fantastic, and the movie is just a great fucking time. Absolutely nothing to do with the book. The
I
book was dark and gritty and sometimes the themes were more adult than the actual storyline itself. And I would love to see the darker, grittier adaptation of Ella Enchanted. And I'm still hoping that someday we get that. You really got to look at them as two separate things.
Absolutely. I loved all of Gail Carson Levine's books. I was
Mm-hmm.
obsessed as a kid, especially Ella Enchanted. I loved
Obsessed.
all her stuff. And the movie, you're right, it is not an accurate or like even close at all, except for like the basic plot of girl named Ella, kind of a Cinderella, has this awful curse. Will it get fixed? Like, besides that, there's like no similarities, but I love it's so camp. It has what's his face from Monty Python as the
Mm-hmm.
narrator. We have Carrie Ellis as the evil uncle. It's just so fun. I agree.
Absolutely.
One that most people don't like are the Hobbit trilogy movies. I love those movies. I don't know if I would say that they're a good adaptation, but I love those movies.
Yeah, honestly, I would say that they are a terrible adaptation. They're not bad movies though. I do like Lord of the Rings much better than I liked The
Oh,
Hobbit. Um,
absolutely.
the Hobbit movies, they just kind of felt a little too long and clunky and like they were milking it. There was no reason for this to be a three movie trilogy. They were just milking that name, and you can tell, especially when they did things like brought back Legolas and introduced love interests that didn't exist. Sometimes, bringing in new characters does not bother me, and the characters were not done bad. Like they're still fun, they're still engaging, they still do add something to the story. It just you could tell that they were milking on these names, milking on these characters, and really just stretching things out in a way that didn't really have to be done, but hey, I mean, they made millions, so I guess it worked out for them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, it's obviously a cash grab, but am I gonna be part of giving them my money? Yes, I would.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Did I go to the midnight showing of all three? I sure did. I treat the Hobbit movies as fan fiction because I've read so much Hobbit fan fiction
Yes.
in my youth that it's like, okay, I've seen like three or four stories that mimic this, so I'm fine with it. And I think that's why I enjoy it more than other people who love The Hobbit. I'm just like, yo, this is fan fiction. Just let it be. Enjoy it.
Yeah, The Hobbit's more than pretty much any series or adaptation that comes to mind is the most fan fiction of any adaptation. Like it is
Hmm.
straight up fan fiction, and it is fun. It's still fun, it's still entertaining, so it works.
Yeah, they're like, and we're gonna make half of these dwarfs really hot, and then me being like, great, because that's how they should be. We'll have half the classic, kind of, big bearded old guys, kind of dwarves, and then the rest are gonna be just shockingly beautiful.
For no reason at all,
Yeah,
except that it's fan
no,
fiction.
just for me, Janessa, personally.
Yeah, it was actually just made for you. Just like that. The
Yes.
casting,
Hmm.
they're like, what will Janessa want to see? Let's make her happy
Exactly.
today.
As far as a popular adaptation people hate, I have not seen this one yet because I'm too scared to. The Persuasion adaptation that came out on Netflix a year or two ago.
Yes. Oh my God. I've been so like dreading watching this, but at the same time, like I love Jane Austen. I have since I was in fifth grade and I first read Pride and Prejudice. Huge Jane Austen fan. Persuasion already wasn't one of my favorite stories. I do still like it. It's just not one of my favorite ones by Jane Austen. But from what I've seen of this adaptation, like it just seems to modernize it in the wrong way.
Hmm.
Like modern adaptations of historical stories, I am so down with. I'm here for it, especially like when it's Shakespeare. Love it. But the thing is, they still kept it in that time period and just used modern language, which really just kind of cut out the most beautiful parts of the story. And I absolutely understand why people hated this adaptation. And I'm sure once I finally bring myself to actually watch the full thing, I will probably agree with that assessment.
Yeah, I'm also a huge Jane Austen fan. Similarly, read Pride and Prejudice really young, and it became my whole personality for forever. I love Persuasion because of how like serious and slow it is. I love that the love letter at the end is one of the best love letters in written history, in my opinion. And so when I saw the little clips of the Netflix adaptation and I saw one how young she was acting and like immature acting, I was like, but Persuasion, she's way more serious. They should have done a retelling of Pride and Prejudice from Lydia's point of view with that weird, quirky breaking the fourth wallness because that's so
Yes,
Lydia.
that is
That's what
so
they should have
Lydia.
done.
That would have worked. See, the biggest issue, or at least one of the issues of this, is Persuasion is probably Jane Austen's most serious story. And they tried to turn it into a quirky comedy, and that just does not work.
Yeah. They could have done that with Emma. They could have done it with Pride and Prejudice if they changed POVs of just focusing on Lydia. They could do it on Northanger Abbey. Northanger Abbey is just satirical Gothic lit,
Yes, like that one
like making
actually would have
fun
been
of
really funny
Wuthering Heights.
as like an office style production of Northanger Abbey. Like I would be so down with that.
Yes.
And
They
there
need
is
to hire us.
yes, they should hire us. I keep saying Netflix, I need to be in charge of Netflix. Me and Stacey McEwen, who was on my podcast last year, we have already discussed this at length. We need to be in charge of Netflix because of what they did to Shadow and Bone. But I digress on that front. Um, but the thing is, we know that the quirky fourth wall break style of storytelling works with Jane Austen because they did it with Mansfield Park featuring Billie Piper many moons ago, and it was fantastic, and I loved her. And she was a very, modern actress thrown into a very historical piece, and she made it work in that fun, quirky way. So there is a way to do a Jane Austen story in this style. They picked the wrong one and they picked the wrong character to do it.
I absolutely agree. And I bet they picked it because Persuasion has the least amount of adaptations because it's so serious compared to her other ones. Not that, Mansfield Park is decently serious, and so are the other ones, characters are dying and being like about to get kicked out, because they're women in, the 1800s. But like they were probably like, oh, there's so many adaptations of Sense and Sensibilities of Emma of Pride and Prejudice. Let's choose Persuasion. No one has done this one in a while. Like that's probably why they did it. And that's just the wrong choice.
Like in some cases, no one has ever done this before is a good take. Like that's original, that's unique. And in other times, it's like, yeah, there's a reason why no one has ever done this.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
I agree.
I have one that a lot of readers did not like this adaptation, and they say that they are all wrong because I love this adaptation. It was fun and just such a great time. I've seen this movie a million times, and I really wish that they kept going because I just loved the style. And that is Vampire Academy.
I've not read or watched Vampire Academy.
Oh my God, it's so fun. They're from like, I want to say the first book came out in like 2007, Vampire Academy. And it is essentially, half of the kids who go to Vampire Academy, which is not the actual name of the school, but that's what they just call it. Half of them are vampires and half of them are Dhampir, which are basically half human, half vampire hybrids whose goal is to be guardians for the vampire royalty. And it's got like it's YA, it's got love interests, it's campy, and yes, it does have some very serious themes and you have characters that die, you have a main love interest who gets turned into a bad guy later on. Like it does have like all these great big plots and twists. And I think part of the reason why the movie didn't do well is because it did not have a budget, like at all. Like there was like they had $20. So I understand from that aspect, why it didn't do super well, but I thought it was just fun and campy in the right way. And the characters were super well done. Like you could tell that the actors knew their characters very well. It was perfectly casted. They did start funding for a sequel on Kickstarter. And it got so close. But the thing with Kickstarter, if you don't hit that goal, you lose it all. And they didn't quite hit it and they lost it and the project died from there.
That's heartbreaking. I have a friend who loves book series and this show. And so I'll eventually probably cover, it's one of the ones I want to cover eventually on the podcast. So that's the nice thing about focusing on book to movie adaptations or TV show adaptations is that it's unlimited because half the
There's
movies
so
made
much.
every year are based on a book. Exactly. This I can only there's only so many vampire books and movies I can do episodes on in a year or in a season before I get vampired out. Because
I get
last
that.
fall we did Dracula, we did Twilight, we did True Blood, and we watched a lot of Dracula adaptations.
There's
Like we
so
had like a movie
many.
marathon. They're great movies. But after finishing the adaptations, I was like, okay, I'm done with vampires for a year.
Like you gotta, have a little bit of a palate cleanser and take a break. Now with Vampire
Hmm.
Academy, there is
Yes.
actually a newer adaptation to it as well. So they had the movie in 2014, and then more recently there was a TV series adaptation, and I did not watch that one, but I know that it did not get renewed for a second season, so I'm assuming it did not do well. Eventually I'll watch it, but I just haven't gotten that far. I have a theory. I have a
Hmm.
theory that the book series that started the YA vampire craze is also part of the reason why the vampire craze died. And of course, that would be Twilight.
Yeah. It launched so many things. It relaunched YA publishing wise, like between Aragon and Twilight. That's why YA is what it is today, arguably, numbers wise. And I would agree because then we got so much Twilight content. Everyone was like, this again.
It's just so crazy to me. When the first book released and started taking off, everything was vampires. Teen vampires everywhere. There was new series focusing on teen vampires coming out, as well as older series focusing on teen vampires that got rejuvenated and brought back into the spotlight, such as The Vampire Diaries. That original book was like 16 years old when Twilight came out, and then they got the adaptation for the series, which is another one that if you separate it from the books, I love it. It has nothing to do with the books really outside of the first episode. Outside of that, nothing to do with it, but I greatly enjoyed it, and the spin-offs, legacies and the originals, love them all so much, and I still love the original books. So Twilight really brought all these vampire stories, as well as, a little bit of werewolf in there for the Team Jacob fans. We got some more werewolf novels at the time. And then, the movies came out, and you hated to love them and you loved to hate them. And by the time the final one came out and the series came to a close, the vampire craze had died. And it's
Yeah.
just so
The
crazy.
timing, it is interesting to think of, especially since, that was when I was a teenager. So, like looking back, I'm like, I was going through like reading all these books and watching these shows in this weird little blip of vampire obsession, which there was vampire obsession like multiple times throughout history. And it's really cool to like see what other events line up with vampire media in general.
I think with movies like the new Nosferatu coming out, I think we're going to see more vampires again, but we're not going to see them as the teenage love interests anymore. I think we're going to be seeing a huge shift in popularity of adult vampire stories, and not necessarily as romances. I do see more horror vampires and gothic vampires taking hold of media. Vampirism has always been a pattern or a repeating theme that ebbs and flows in its popularity, and I think we're seeing it become more popular again in a darker sphere, which then, of course, will shift back to romance, as it always does. I think we will see more vampire romance. I just think first we're going to get the gothic and the horror vampire stories first.
I agree. I loved Nosferatu. Throw Skarsgård in, and I'm down.
Yep, throw a Skarsgård, like any of them. We'll watch it.
Any of them.
Even when
Yep.
they're like creepy and gross, because that Nosferatu was
Yeah.
terrifying.
Terrifying. I agree.
He was a freak.
Terrifying. But I was watching it. Yes, absolutely. Or the Skarsgård that's in the dad who's in Dune. Also
hmm
creepy, but I loved Dune. Yeah.
Give a
In
Skarsgård
Mamma
and we
Mia,
will watch
a
it.
Skarsgård.
Yes, absolutely. You know what we have to talk about? And this one
Hmm.
has not been released yet, but I am sure that there will be many podcast episodes about it coming in the future. And that is the new upcoming adaptation for Wuthering Heights.
Wuthering Heights. The casting choices.
Right? Like, okay, I love Margot Robbie. Absolutely love
Yes.
her. And I mean, the other guy, Jacob Elordi, like, he's popular and stuff,
He's
like, whatever. I do not see either one of them in a historical movie like this in the first place. And even outside of that, as these characters, like, what do you mean?
was to say, I don't see either of them like wandering through the like Lake District of England sad. Neither of them give me that vibe.
Not at
You
all.
know?
Yeah, they don't have the right vibe. I gotta say, like, it's just a prime example of casting based on name and popularity, and it's not casting on the actual story. Like, has any of these people involved in this movie actually read Wuthering Heights? Because I don't think so.
Yeah, I am nervous for this adaptation, but it will be interesting to see how it goes. Like how serious they're gonna take it. I don't know. I think they're good actors. Like obviously Margot Robbie is amazing, but it just doesn't feel like their historical vibes.
Also, like, Catherine is supposed to be like 19 years old. Like, she is very young and naive. That is a part of her character, and it's why, some of these issues happen is because she is young and passionate and naive and very headstrong, and she really acts upon her passions. And I just don't see, I mean, I love Margot Robbie, but she is not young enough to play a teenager, and Heathcliff is not a white man. Like, a big part of why they can't be together is because of racism. And this is not the only adaptation to erase that aspect of Heathcliff's character. But I mean, come on, it's 2025 and we still can't get accurate casting. Like, you can't have a story about racism when all the characters are white.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They
Like,
just fumbled the casting so hard. I do still want to see it because I am interested because Margot Robbie's not going to sign on to a project she doesn't believe in. Like she's got that Barbie money now. You know what I mean? She's only going to do projects she believes in. And I'm very interested in see what she believed about this project, you know? Oh yeah, yeah. Who asked for it? That's a great
exactly.
question.
Like, who asked for
Unanswerable.
this? Who asked for Jacob Elordi? Really, like, if they want to make a adaptation of Wuthering Heights, I'm actually super here for that. But it needs to be like, I mean, for Heathcliff, we need like Dev Patel. He, I think, would
Yes.
be an incredible Heathcliff. He's an absolutely amazing actor, and he can so do like a dark gothic vibe and that torturous love interest. I would so pay to see that.
I agree 100%. Absolutely. And like they must when they're making this adaptation of Wuthering Heights, they have to have some sort of like thesis of why the casting matching the casting choices. Like what is the point of view they're trying to like spin on it? Like what are they trying to emphasize or like critique? And I want to know what that is.
Yeah, because I'm just not seeing it at this point. And then for Catherine, I would honestly really like to see Emily Carey. She plays the young Alicent Hightower in the House of the Dragon show on HBO, and I think she could absolutely body the young, naive, passionate gothic romance heroine.
I could see that definitely. I think she would be great as Catherine.
But alas, they won't put us in charge.
Sadly, sadly.
Yeah, again, this is why I need to be in charge of these decisions because I don't know what they think they're doing. So silly. So this
That
has been
happens,
super
doesn't
fun.
it?
I know that we have to stop
Yeah.
talking so that this isn't 6 hours long. This has
Yeah.
been a lot of fun, discussing about the book podcast connection with you and our perspective podcast experiences. And I really enjoyed talking about our favorite and least favorite adaptations. And for any of our listeners, what are some adaptations you have really loved? What are some adaptations that you absolutely cannot stand? And where do you agree or disagree with some of our takes on these adaptations? Because I'm sure someone is listening like, wow, way off base. I can't believe you just said that. Like, let me know. You think I'm wrong? Let me know. Tell me. I want to hear about
Yes,
it. And Janessa, thank you so much for
absolutely.
joining me today. This has been such a blast. And I want everyone to check out Read the Book First podcast. She's got so many great adaptations and awesome guests to just kind of talk about books and watch some movies.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @Must Love Books Podcast. Thank you and happy reading.